Uncommon Journey Richie Cates is made possible by the following sponsors: Allen Associates, South Jersey's leader in employee benefit management and personal, financial, and accounting services since 1960. D'Andrea Produce, since 1917, committed to you and your family's health. Kennedy Concrete, the area's leading supplier of concrete, brick, block, cement, pavers, stone, and mulch. Gateway Community Action Partnership, celebrating 30 years of helping people, changing lives. Preziosi Nicholson and Associates, accounting, tax, and payroll services with a personal touch. Morrow's on the Ave, great food, great atmosphere. And now we present to you the pride of the All Sports Museum of Southern New Jersey, our light heavyweight champ, Richie Cates.
Richie Cates, pillar of the community, determined contender, quiet leader, champion, humble family man, dedicated political activist, role model, mentor, church deacon, and a beacon of hope. This is the story of a man who has been an inspiration to countless others, from his hometown in Cumberland County, New Jersey, to areas across the globe.
I have 7 brothers and 3 sisters, man. Grew up tough and poor. My family were migrant workers. They followed back in those days. People moved up from the South. In my case, we came from Georgia, and we were looking for field work.
Richie Cates was born in Savannah, Georgia, in the early 1950s to John and Alice Cates. In 1954, the family moved north, like many Southern African American families at the time, in search of better work and living conditions.
I think because of coming from such a large family, and he'll tell me things now, it's still sort of hard to understand, I believe it, but to understand it. For instance, for Christmas, he said they didn't get gifts for Christmas. They got, I guess, just food, because there was so many of them. They didn't have a TV, so they read a lot.
Settling first in Cedarville, New Jersey, and later in nearby Bridgeton, both in rural Cumberland County, in the southern part of the Garden State, the Cates family, including young Richard and his 10 siblings, were migrant workers who toiled for long days on area farms.
I think that is what motivated him, that he wanted to, pick himself up and he wanted to excel.
It's got to be a better life than this.
Richie knew from a young age he was destined to do something else with his life. On Saturdays, he would watch boxing on TV as a child.
I remember watching TV one Saturday, and there's some guys on there boxing. Then a friend of mine, somebody who was in the room, said, "Man, them guys get paid for doing it." I can really do that.
Richie was intrigued. He would eventually start taking the bus about 10 miles to the neighboring city of Millville, where there was a police athletic league gym. There, at just 12 years old, Richie began to impress some of the local boxing trainers. He was big for his age and had a fierce determination to become a professional fighter.
Looking back, I'm proud to say that I did. I worked hard. It made me a better man,
It's the times we lived in. They were different. They called for you to be about your business. We in the 60s and 70s, we couldn't afford to fail. We couldn't afford to be second class.
Fighting to me was like a second nature, but I wasn't skilled at doing that.
He was soon taken under the wing of trainer Letty Petway, who would become a father figure to Richie and stick with him throughout his boxing career.
We didn't have a whole lot of money, and in order for me to get to Bridgeton to Millville, I had to catch a bus. I just barely had enough coins to feed me, buy my lunch for school, so I know they were going nowhere where they're gonna get me money to catch a bus. Now from Bridgeton to Millville, I believe it's like 15 miles. On Route 49, it's it's kind of long. So I mentioned this to a friend of mine. I said, "Man, I don't know how I'm gonna get to the gym." He said, "Man, what you gotta do? You gotta hitchhike." I said, "Hitchhike? What do you mean by that?" I said, "Man, you gotta get out on the road. You gotta put your thumb out, and hope somebody comes by and pick you up."
When the bus became too expensive for Richie, he began hitchhiking his way back and forth between Bridgeton and Millville. That's when he met Jimmy Muhammad.
I made a new friend by the name of Jimmy James Wallace. And he was heading back into Bridgeton, and he saw me hitchhiking. He turned around. He made him pick me up.
Jimmy would see Richie walking back and forth on Route 49, which connects Bridgeton and Millville, on his way home from work. Eventually, he began giving Richie rides to the Millville Pal Gym and would make sure he had a safe ride home.
Yeah, I would see him trying to hitchhike to Millville, and I would stop and pick him up a couple of times. And he realized that I was going to do that, and he stopped hitchhiking and come to my house and wait for me.
I like to think during that time he was an angel sent to me by God.
Richie had the kind of character that drawed people who are older than him to want to help him. That's why I wanted to help him, because I saw something in him that I didn't see in a lot of the kids in Bridgeton. He just didn't want to fight to be ornery and bad. It wasn't what it was. He defended himself, true, but he found somewhere to lace them gloves up and make a positive thing out of it. And he struggled with it. He had discipline. All the boys in the Cates family could fight, but he's the one that had the discipline. And anything that you want to do, if you want to do it and won't discipline yourself to do it, you're not going to be good at it. He disciplined himself.
Thank God I got a chance to go over there, and I learned to learn the box.
During this time, Richie also met his future wife, Gloria Hagan.
So I met him in junior high school, and Rich is very shy. It'd probably be surprising to a lot of people, but he's shy. So he would be walking through the cafeteria, and I would say hello to him, and he'd say, yeah, and kept walking. So every day I would say, hi, Richard, like that. And he would keep walking. He was kind of shy.
Petway and Muhammad would soon be joined by Tony and Bonnie Caccaro of Millville in Richie's corner. The couple co-managed Richie from the time he was 16 years old in 1969, along with Joe Granby of nearby Philadelphia, until Cates retired from the sport in 1983. Cates never really had the chance to experience his childhood. He was working in the fields with his family from a young age, dedicating himself to boxing starting at age 12 and beginning a career as a recreation supervisor in the New Jersey prison system in his late teens. But at 16, he did something not many others have ever done at that age. He turned professional.
He lied about his age. He's 16 years old, running around with gloves on, wanting to fight people professionally. And he did. He did very well. He just kept winning.
Although he met his wife Gloria when they were in grade school in the early 1960s and started dating while attending high school together, at 16, Richie had a child from a previous relationship.
Richard turned professional. He had a child at 16, and that was one of the reasons he turned professional, so that he could take care of his child. I was always impressed that he wants to take care of his family, his home. When we graduated from high school, I went to college, and a lot of our friends, went to college. Richard got a job down at Leesburg State Prison as an assistant supervisor of recreation.
By the time Richie was 21, his second career, working in the state's correctional facilities as a recreation director, was blossoming. He began working at Leesburg Prison in Maurice Township, renamed Bayside State Prison in 1988, in the early 1970s, and would continue to mentor and work with inmates at other prisons and jails in the state during and following his fight career. Unlike present-day pro athletes, who are among the top wage earners in the world, athletes in Cates' era had to supplement their incomes with day jobs to support their families. Richie did so by working in the state prison system, overseeing recreation programs for inmates, a vocation he continues to this day. Meanwhile, his career in the ring started out strong. Richie won his initial 18 bouts, including 6 knockouts.
I got a phone call from the Caccaros, Bonnie and Tony Caccaro, and they said that they had this great young man that had a tremendous amount of potential as a boxer, and I should write a story about him. I said, okay, well, like to meet him. He was practicing in a gym down in Millville, and I went down there with a photographer, and I couldn't believe that this guy was a boxer because he was incredibly soft-spoken, very shy, one-word answers to questions, and I thought, this is crazy. But then I watched him get in the gym and start sparring, and that incredible left jab he had, and I thought, he's actually something pretty special.
He probably had the fastest hands in the light heavyweight division. He don't like me to say that. He thinks he didn't. He had the fastest hands in the light heavyweight division.
So in the 70s, Richie Cates was in with the guys like Matthew Saad Muhammad. He was in with Dwight Muhammad Cowie. Mike Rossman was coming up. Michael Spinks was coming up. Marvin Johnson, Victor Galendez. This was the who's who of the light heavyweight division, and Richie Cates was right in the middle of all that.
He became a Philadelphia favorite, often fighting in the city of brotherly love at the former Spectrum, the Philadelphia Boxing Arena, and the Blue Horizon during the city's 1970s golden age of boxing, as well as in places such as Atlantic City and Baltimore.
And he just kept winning and winning and winning. And we followed him up in this city, Trenton, or Philadelphia, New York, wherever he was fighting at. I couldn't go to Africa with him, but other places he went. But we followed him. And we always looked at the paper, waiting to see what he did if we wasn't there, I don't know if he knocked them all cold, but they couldn't stand up under them fast hands.
And I think he ran out 10 or 12 or 13 fights without a loss. Then he started to attract more regional attention. Fought a couple bouts at the Spectrum, and then it gradually accelerated towards that fight he had in '76 with Victor Galendez, the first one.
Richie suffered his first professional loss on October 11th, 1972, against Eddie Owens in front of a Philadelphia crowd. But within a year, he would get his revenge against Owens in the midst of another impressive string of victories. While Richie's daughter, Patricia Mitchell, was born in 1970 when Richie was 16, he fathered a second daughter, Rashida Pratt, born in 1982. In 1974, Richie and Gloria married. They would go on to have 3 children together: Richard Jr., born in 1976, Ryan, born in 1980, and Randall, born in 1985. They recall what it was like living with a world-class boxer as a husband and father who worked hard, traveled often, could be strict with his children, but was also a lovable goofball.
When you go to a fight for the first time, it's a little surprising because you don't realize you hear them hitting each other. You hear the smacks, the gloves, and the boxing crowd is similar to the wrestling crowd. Everything's coming out of their mouths, and they want to see a knockout. They want to see blood.
I think the silver lining, I think with him, he never, like I said, he never really pushed boxing on us. One thing is that he did push his hard work. Like, you couldn't lay around the house. Like, if he got home after work, you were laying around the house, you had to be doing something.
Oh, man, yeah. Listen.
So he always, from sun up to sundown, you had to be doing something. So he always pushed work, hard work. And so, it's dedication to your craft. Whatever you're going to be the best you.
He's very family-oriented, very responsible, very disciplined.
Any professional sport, you have to be really dedicated. And that's something my dad. He's real disciplined and real dedicated. Even to this day, he's still into the routine that he wakes up in the morning and goes walking. He thinks he's about to go fight for the championship still.
Yeah.
All right? My dad's probably in better shape than me. I'm 36 right now.
So he was away a lot. But he was, when he was home, he was home,
With his kids, like everybody else, scared of my dad. Like, yeah. My dad's real playful. He's like a real, playful guy. Like, people might see him and stuff like that. They say that about me too. Say I have a serious look, and a lot of people be like scared of my dad. But they don't know. He's like a goofy guy. he's the play rubber band man. But it's like he get rubber band man, and like chases around.
In May of 1974, Cates' record stood at 25-1. And the stage was set for the biggest milestone of his career. Richie scored a first-round knockout against the North American Boxing Federation light heavyweight champ Jimmy Dupree to take possession of the crown, a title he defended for 4 years. But Cates' eyes were on another prize, the world title. Cates was invited to travel overseas for a bout in South Africa, his first of 4 fights in the country. The fight would not only introduce Cates to an international audience, but would also show him firsthand the serious implications of South Africa's apartheid system. Not only did he discover that South African blacks didn't have the same civil rights as whites, but that apartheid restrictions also barred interracial boxing matches. Upon arrival, Richie learned that his opponent had been changed from Jan Keys, a white boxer, to James Matato, who was black.
So I thought that all Africa was the same, be it North or South or whatever, you know. He said, no, laws are a little different in South Africa. So, all right. People kept telling me, said, listen, they got apartheid laws over there. I didn't understand the meaning of the word apartheid. Apartheid is the separation of the races. The boxing laws forbid the blacks and whites from fighting each other. Could not fight in the same ring at the same time. I didn't realize how serious and how stringent apartheid was during that time. I mean, you had to be off the streets at a certain time. You had to be off before it started. I mean, you couldn't even go to the same bathroom with I would see signs saying blanks, B-L-A-N-K-S. I said, what you mean, what's the blanks? He said, that means you're nothing. I said, wow, so that certainly doesn't mean me, I'm somebody. My first trip there, I was supposed to fight a guy by the name of Jan Keys. Then once my plane landed in the country, my opponent changed. James Matato. I said, man, that's not the guy who my contract said I was supposed to fight. He said, nah, well, they had a little problem here and we didn't have permission from the government to for you to fight. And I said, well, you know, I don't care who I fight, just as long as I fight. And I got in the ring and I fought and I beat the guy.
Beating stand-in Matato earned Cates an invitation back to South Africa, but not before racking up 2 more stateside wins. Another victory against another black South African, Muhammad Afonso, in May of 1975, set the stage for a historic bout, one of the first interracial boxing matches in South African history. Cates would travel to Johannesburg, South Africa, to take on Pierre Fourie at Rand Stadium. His defeat of Fourie positioned Cates for the biggest match of his career.
Once I reflect on where I came from and where I was at that point, I couldn't believe it. I said, man, here I am, you know, poor little colored boy from Georgia. You know, I called myself then. Fighting for the championship of the world, man. The kings and queens of different countries watch me fight. I said, man, it's all right. This boxing thing is pretty good, you know.
That was our kind of hero to watch. You know, the natives of Bridgeton, New Jersey, where I grew up at, and in Cumberland County in general, everybody was hovering around the radio and the TVs, watching, you know, our local hero represent, you know, the hopes and dreams of a lot of young African American kids that looked up to him at that time and that wanted to use sports as a vehicle to get up out of the impoverished situation.
Richie had been granted the opportunity to face world light heavyweight champion Victor Galindez of Argentina. This bout would bring Richie back to South Africa's Rand Stadium in May of 1976 for one of the most memorable and controversial bouts in boxing history.
My 4th trip to South Africa, it was the most important fight of my life. You know, I shot the light heavyweight championship of the world, and against Victor Galindez. I wasn't a favorite, you know. But I just thought in my mind that, man, this is a fight I'm gonna win that championship.
I went into my boss and I said, you know, Richie Cates, the boxer that we've been covering all these years, is going to be fighting for the WBA title in Johannesburg, South Africa. And my boss said, no. And I said, well, wait a minute, you haven't heard the question yet. He goes, well, I know what the question is, and the answer is no. So I had to listen to it on a transistor radio. As a reporter, in my entire career, it was one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to do, because it's a visual sport that you cannot imagine over the radio. I don't care how good the person is describing the action. That's why I said when I saw it for the first time, it was almost, you know, the complete opposite of what I expected I would see. I did not think it would look like that on the screen. So that speaks volumes about what it was like to be there versus listening to it on the radio. Not only that, who knows what those announcers, what their particular bias was and how they were describing the things that happened.
Welcome to ringside for this World Championship fight between Victor Galindez, that's the man in the blue with the white trim, the defending champion in the light heavyweight title fight against Richie Cates of the USA. And most unusual this because it's only the second time that a World Championship fight has taken place in South Africa featuring two foreign boxers. Galindez we've seen many times before in South Africa and well known in these parts and a bit of a favourite locally. Galindez is not noted as a boxer, he's basically a fighter, likes to get on the inside and rough up his opponent, but Cates of course is aware of this and he's going to keep him out as long as he can. Cates got the title shot here this evening by beating Pierre Ferrier over 10 rounds. He aims to take the title back home with him tonight. Men get on the inside, you notice that the heads come together. That could become a problem if it happens too often, and particularly in view of Galindez's style. You see he ducks low and comes up, and that's a danger thing for Cates. He's got to be aware of that. And there's the end of round one. Well, that was quite clearly a good round for Cates. I would think on most scorecards he had taken that first round. Very good for a challenger to do that. The American challenger making a very good impression here in the second round. Galindez still hasn't really got into his stride, and he would welcome the fight, I think, to be fought at close quarters rather than at a distance. Once again, you see the heads bumping together as the men clinch, and that could be a danger as the fight wears on. Referee Stan Christodoulou of South Africa will have to watch for that kind of work. And this is a big breakthrough for Stan Christodoulou because it's a major fight, and he's been given the assignment as referee. Cates has made a remarkably good start to this fight. But now Galindez is beginning to counter as we come to the end of the second round. Well, Cates has done very well in rounds 1 and 2. Galindez looks as though he might be getting into his stride. He certainly finished the second well.
You know, I have a tape of that fight, and whenever I get to the third round, I just can't bear to watch it. You know, 'cause I just, you know, it's just the way it is.
That left hand of Cates flashing out time and again. It scores a lot of points for the challenger. Sure to impress the judges around ringside. And the judges around ringside are 3 South Africans.
Well, this is when it happened, when I, you know. Right there. Yeah, shit. I hit the right hand, you know. I should have, like, I don't know. It shocked me, but I should have hopped on and just kept punching him, you know. Once I hit him, I should just kept punching him. Because he quit. I thought that, well, I thought when he did that, I thought he was quitting. I backed off of him, so I should have kept hitting. I blame myself for that. Yeah. Yes, I replayed this part right here, this scene right here, over and over in my head. When it happened, when he turned his back and walked away, I should have just hopped on and just kept punching him. They would have had to stop the fight during that time because he quit. Right. But I allowed him to recuperate, and you know. And for some reason, I just didn't have that desire anymore, you know. So I felt like I was being cheated, you know.
At this point, do you think?
I thought the fight was over.
Lots of confusion there. The fight, in fact, was stopped for 5 minutes, and the no-foul rule was applied for the first time in the history of boxing for an accidental cut. You've seen a replay of what happened there, and Stan Christodoulou having to make a very important decision indeed. Now, this could either cost Galindez his world title, or it could lead to a momentous decision on the part of Christodoulou. Cates, obviously confused. I think he thinks he's won the world title, and so do quite a few people around ringside. Photographers have climbed into the ring now. Surely this suggests that the fight is over, And there's lots of confusion. Nobody really knows what's happened. You can note that Cates, in fact, has got a towel draped over him. He's waiting to be proclaimed the new world champion. At the rules meeting earlier in the day, it was decided that if there's an accidental butt, which causes a cut, there will be a maximum of 5 minutes in which the corner of the man who's been injured can work on that injury. And this is what Chris Adulu has enforced here this evening, and now the fight gets underway. So Richie Cates is not the world champion. He thought he was, and my goodness, look at Cates come, look at Galindez come back. He's fighting ferociously here in the third round.
During the fight with Galindez, I remember hitting him with an uppercut right hand, and I cut him. As soon as I cut him, we had a referee's shirt, and we started wiping his face on it. I guess the referee was his towel.
Once the blood started, it was kind of exciting. It was like, wow, you know, the guy's bleeding, and there was a great anticipation for, you know, the eventual victory for Richie.
And once again, the blood keeps streaming down the face of Galindez. You can see how it's affecting his vision. He's flicking his head, wiping the blood away with his gloves. Under a terrible handicap was Victor Galindez. Well, already the shirt of referee Stan Christodoulou getting blood soaked from the blood streaming down the face of Galindez. And you begin to wonder how much blood Galindez is likely to lose in this fight. It's scheduled for 15 rounds.
Subsequently, and around the 14th round, the fight was stopped, and blood was, you know, they did a makeshift patching of the cut, and kind of once the fight resumed, you know, we still was hopeful that he was going to win, and kind of let the steam out of the room once the decision was announced that he wasn't going to win the fight.
I thought the fight was over. He quit. He turned his back and he quit, and I allowed him to turn his back and walk away. Instead of me hopping on him, just hitting him with punches, you know, and I blame myself for that. But who else can I blame? But you know what? I guess it wasn't meant to be, you know. Sometimes I look back at it and I blame myself for it. I could have been a little bit more aggressive. It just didn't happen, but in some ways I just thought that, you know, South African judges, they had all the judges were South African. They were not going to let me walk out of that country with that championship. Especially when their favorite son, Pierre Fury, he couldn't do it. I guess they weren't going to allow me, black African American, doing it.
I'm not sure what was going on in the ring that day, but it certainly wasn't fair to Richie. The fight being stopped for 15 minutes, people crowding into the ring, photographers taking a picture of Richie, him having a towel on, and it looked like it was over for all intents and purposes. And then the fight resumed. And of course, Richie was so angry and upset by then that it was pretty obvious that, you know, he was not mentally back into the fight, and I think that had a lot to do with him eventually losing.
Quite naturally over the years, you know, I replayed the fight over and over again. You know, I replayed it in my head. But you know, the bottom line is, today I'm healthy, and I'm living a little life, and have a beautiful wife and kids, and hey, thank God for that. Early on after the fight, I had bitterness somewhat, you know. I said, man, I should have won that fight. He took it from me, and you know, and I should have been a champion, you know, and I make different excuses. You know, I guess it just wasn't meant to be for me to be champion. Just wasn't meant to be. And so many other guys would just love to be in my position, you know, to do the things that I've done. After the fight, a lot of these South African natives, people who lived there, you know, both black and white, they all hugged me and told me, saying, listen, you're the champion, they robbed you.
I think it has affected him down through the years, you know, what he could have, should have done, you know, to be crowned champion per se. For, they say 15 minutes, I don't know, 5, 10, however long, it was longer than the norm. It was quite devastating for him.
If you could just transpose everything that happened back in the 70s to now, I don't think that first Galindez fight would have ended like that. And if you can just, you know, extrapolate from there, then he would have been the WBA champ, and then everything would have changed. Everything.
In today's world, what would happen is that cut, if it stopped the fight, it would have been too early. They would have called a technical draw. There would have been no decision, and he would have traveled to South Africa for nothing unless he could stretch it out to, say, 5 rounds, in which case the scorecards would kick in. It would have been a tricky thing he would have been trying to wiggle through, and it's hard to say what would have happened. It just might have been a disappointment from a different perspective.
After more than 40 years, the controversy surrounding Richie's first world title fight still lingers. The long stoppage in the 3rd round and the fact that Galindez continuously used the referee's shirt as a blotter left a worldwide audience hungry for a rematch. Before flying to Rome, Italy for another shot at the world title, Cates defended his NABF crown in Atlantic City just 3 months after the devastating loss in Johannesburg. He would exact his revenge by knocking out Don Rucker in the 2nd round at Convention Hall on the world-famous boardwalk. In June of 1977, the world and Richie would get the rematch they longed for.
The second time around, the rematch, there was a long break between. I hadn't fought in a while, but I'm not using that as an excuse. So I did fight him again the second time, and he won again.
This time, the fight was as hotly contested, and again the foes went the distance for a grueling 15 rounds. But Galindez emerged victorious once again, retaining his WBA world crown and sending Richie back to the U.S. to focus on the defense of his NABF title.
He came right back among his peers, like he left.
A classy, dignified guy, one of the most favored people I ran across in all the time that I've been in boxing, and that's now more than 30 years, and an exceptional product of his time.
And that's what I always loved about him. He never got beside himself because the crowd was hollering, Richie, Richie, Richie. He never did that. Never.
Just 2 months after the Rome fight, Cates was back on his home turf for a match staged only a few miles from his hometown in Vineland, New Jersey, where he easily beat Harold Carter by knockout in 3 rounds. His next fight proved to be a more challenging affair. His opponent was up-and-comer Matthew Franklin, who is now better remembered as Matthew Saad Muhammad. The match would be considered by many boxing analysts to be the fight of the year for 1978, but Cates would relinquish his NABF title after a 6th round technical knockout.
It was a good fight. Matter of fact, I think it won Fight of the Year award. That was a award in itself. That was a hard fight.
I can understand where a fighter would say, oh, what might have been, or people who support him say, oh, it might have been. But I look at the body of work, and I look at the consistency, and I say this guy was an exceptional fighter at a great time. In this day and age, Richie Cates would have had a couple belts. Richie Cates would have been having a tenure. He would have had some nice television fights, would have made some more money. Because when you look at him, he had the ability to be an exceptional light heavyweight at a time when the division was at its zenith, but before television.
The year 1978 ushered in a new age for Atlantic City with the opening of Resorts International, the first casino resort outside of Las Vegas. The world turned its attention to America's favorite playground. The biggest headliners in the entertainment business flocked to Resort's Superstar Theater, and boxing was one of the hottest tickets to keep high rollers amused during breaks from the tables and slots. Among the boxers on the very first fight card in Atlantic City's casino era was none other than Richie Cates, who defeated Carlos Marx in front of a packed house in November of 1978. Cates still held out hope for another shot at a title, but despite a solid 10-2 record after losing his NABF crown, the opportunity never materialized. Frustrated by empty promises of title fights, Richie decided to hang up his boxing gloves while he was still in his prime at 30 years of age. He finished his boxing career in 1983 after 5 straight wins in Atlantic City, just as the city's casino-era boxing renaissance was about to explode.
Richie Cates was 44-6. In some realms of occupation, if you're 44-6, they'll name a street after you.
To me, you had a lot of folks who were involved in boxing, and they just weren't honest. They had been promising me telling me that I was going to shot at the championship. and it just never happened. So I said, listen, you know what? I'm not like a lot of these other guys who boxing's all they got. I can do other things. They're gonna give me a shot at the championship. I'm gonna retire.
Despite calls from other managers and trainers over the years, including Don King, who wanted to take over his career and who made big promises, Richie stayed true to his roots, remaining loyal to those who helped him as a young kid from Bridgeton and sticking with the same team of Petway, the Cocaros, and Granby throughout his entire boxing career. Following his retirement from boxing with an impressive 44-6 record, effectively closing the door on his pro boxing career, Cates stayed engaged in the fight scene, though his attention was now focused on developing young talent in and out of the ring, as well as his family and spreading hope throughout the state's prison system.
I wasn't just going to depend on boxing to take care of me. You know, like I had a pretty good job during that time. I was working for the state of New Jersey.
And that's one of the greatest things about Richie, is that he's a person that throughout his post-boxing career has always done work that has served the public interest. He had a commitment to public service, to his family, and to his community.
At just 30 years of age and with nearly a decade of experience working in the prisons, Richie's passion to help others, in addition to his unique talents working with and getting through to people, led him to continue working with inmates.
Richie, like a lot of people who were very powerful physically, is very calm all the time. He doesn't have to appear mean or tough or anything, because he is. So the inmates would see him as, I think, non-judgmental. And I think Richie understands what poverty does to people sometimes and making bad decisions. And so they would appreciate that he wasn't judgmental with them.
After his pro boxing career ended, Cates became more involved with his church as well, eventually becoming a deacon and member of the choir. In an effort to affect change in his community, Cates got involved behind the scenes in local politics and on the boards of various organizations.
He's never given me a hard time. He's respected my position as pastor. It was on my recommendation that we place him on the board of deacons. And I think because of his life and his story, that people respect that. And I think that's what makes him unique. Regardless of what accomplishments he's made, he's always honored the Creator. And so I thank God for Richard Cates, because you know the script could flip, and all that energy that he puts in being positive could be changed for negative. But he's chosen to live a life for Christ, to live a life where it means something in the community.
In 2008, he retired from the New Jersey State Prison System and started to run the Vineland Police Athletic League. In fact, the PAL gym was dedicated in his name that same year.
I got a phone call from the mayor of Vineland during that time, and he told me he wanted to put together a boxing gymnasium, Vineland PAL. Through that corporation, we were able to help touch on a lot of lives, turn a lot of kids, you know, and we were successful. We had some good fighters during that time.
I think the PAL was his heart. He sort of, from the ground up, built the program.
Always wanted to give back. People gave to me when I was coming up my boxing career, and I wanted to do the same thing. And I'm blessed. I thank God that I was able to do that.
At this age, you probably go home and retire, but I don't think there's any retirement for him. There's still work for him to do.
In 2015, Cates came out of retirement to start working part-time as a recreation supervisor at the Cumberland County Jail, just blocks from where he grew up.
When I first brought him here, and because he's local, all the staff who knew him.
I knew Richie for like 40 years. I used to go to the gym when he was a boxer there. I learned a lot from him.
And then the inmates, the same thing. And sometimes they'd be a little embarrassed, you know, when they saw him and they were in here. But he always, like I told you, he doesn't get judgmental with people. But he might make a little suggestion.
When you get out, there's hope, you know. Keep your head up, walk the straight path, and do what's right for the right reasons.
Other people are gonna look down upon you with your circumstances, but you know what I mean, you gotta have faith in yourself, and when you have that, you can achieve what you wanna achieve.
When he talks to them, he might change somebody's life just from a comment that he makes.
I'm there to counsel with them and talk with them and explain to them different, as much as I can, different laws and different rules.
I see a lot of respect from them to Richie?
It's something I used to hear, but I don't hear it that much, and it feels kind of good to hear from a person that really care about a person, even though his criminal history, still care about a person.
In my own way, I feel like I'm giving back. When you look at that and you say, well, you guys, they did something wrong, they don't need to be rewarded. I'm not saying I'm rewarding them, but I'm just opportunity to get a chance to turn somebody around. I like to touch somebody in there. You know, there's one person that's turn their lives around, give them the opportunity to do so.
His work with the inmates there continues to this day, as does his volunteer work with young fighters at a neighborhood boxing gym in Vineland, Next Level Boxing.
When I was a kid, I was training at the gym over at the Police Athletic Wing, and I used to see him over there, and I watched him train, you know, as a kid to watch Richie Cates boxing on TV. Seeing that, and I know this guy. I've seen him in the same gym, you know what I mean?
He wants to make sure that the things are done the way he's done it.
We're here working with the champion, who I call the champion of the world, you know what I mean? Teaching me a lot, getting a lot of experience from him, and I really appreciate that.
The way they used to train, he's a very old school trainer, very strict, regimental, on schedule, 5 days a week. You have a fight coming up 6 days, get up and run, and you don't drink, you don't smoke, you have a good diet.
You gotta know what you want to do. You gotta be serious about this sport.
You know, just like when I was a kid, I didn't understand what was going on. A lot of times, you learn later on in life. You look back and say, well, now all what the coaches was doing, all the experience that was shared with you, now I'm able to share it with these guys, and they might not understand right now, but later on in life they'll be a good man. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I learned: good values, and how to be a good person, a good man. You know,
it's not an easy game. You know, you got to take a lot of shots to the head, to the kidneys and stuff, and your body can only take so much. And every time you get smacked upside your head, boy, your knees get weak. Sometimes a man gets knocked down, he ain't hurt, his equilibrium is off. Because you slapped him inside his head and he just fall, boom.
I look back over my career and things that I've done, and I'm proud of where I am now. I'm proud to still be able to communicate. I may not be the best spokesman, but I just thank God for my ability to put words together now. You know, so many people are can't do that.
You know, some people were just boxing, that's all they were, but my dad was just more than just a boxer. He was a people person, he was in the community. You know, he just like somebody that, you know, people really could look up to, a real role model.
My dream is to find somebody, some young 13, 14-year-old kid, you know, who's not afraid to get out there and sacrifice all he has to do in order to make it. Somewhere, he's there somewhere. Well, I hate to say he or she's there somewhere because they got women involved in boxing now, but I'd like to find that individual. That's my ultimate dream. It'll be my way of giving back. I mean, not that I haven't given back, you know, positively over the years, but that'd be the ultimate give back for myself.
In a large room behind Hassan's Hair Hut Barbershop in Vineland, local youth as well as professional boxers train at a gym run by Richie's longtime friend and fellow pugilist, Hassan Hamid El. This is where, in a sense, Richie's life story has come full circle. He is now the one offering a helping hand to young boxers coming into the gym on a weekly basis, while demonstrating some of the attributes that made him one of the best fighters of his time, as well as offering pointers and support to the up-and-comers. Richie Cates, now with several grandchildren of his own, continues to give back to the community's youth and do for others as they had done for him. But Richie still has one last order of business to attend to find that young fighter who is as eager and devoted to the sport as he was at the age of 12 and help him or her become the disciplined and determined boxer and person that he did. Richie's journey continues.
So when Evander Holyfield is coming down that aisle and he's getting ready to fight, he fought a guy named Bird, I remember. And he sees Richie and he's like, "Hey, Rich," you know, it's like, really? Don King.
And his mother used to always say, "You take care of." He don't want me to say that. But what is his nickname? If his mother said it, She said it out of a labor of love. She said, take care of Puddin'. That's not so terrible. He didn't like it, but Mama said it. But she didn't say it to embarrass him. That came out of her heart. She loved him.
Not that I've ever heard Richie sing a song. I know he's on the choir. I know he moves his mouth. He seems like he's into it.
One day it's gonna be like Rocky with all the little kids running around, all embracing environment.
Uncommon Journey, Richie Cates is made possible by the following sponsors: Allen Associates, South Jersey's leader in employee benefit management and personal, financial, and accounting services since 1960. D'Andrea Produce, since 1917, committed to you and your family's health. Kennedy Concrete, the area's leading supplier of concrete, brick, block, cement, pavers, stone, and mulch. Gateway Community Action Partnership, celebrating 30 years of helping people, changing lives. Preziosi Nicholson and Associates, accounting, tax, and payroll services with a personal touch. Morrow's on the Ave, great food, great atmosphere. And the All Sports Museum of Southern New Jersey, Richie Cates, our light heavyweight champ,